Thousands of sheep broke loose across England on the same night. A town in Ohio was terrorized by letters that predicted a man's death, and a mechanic walked away from a landed craft with burns doctors couldn't explain. These are more real events that left experts without answers. On the night of November 3rd, 1888, farmers across parts of Oxfordshire, Berkshire, and Wiltshire woke up to the same problem. Their sheep had broken out overnight. Reports came in from across a wide stretch of southern England. Fences had been pushed over, gates were forced open, and sheep were found roaming across roads, fields, and woods, sometimes miles from where they were kept the night before, and nobody really knew why. There were no reports of predators in the area, no major storms, nothing obvious that explained why all these sheep ran off. Newspapers at the time described farmers finding their flocks panicked and exhausted. Some sheep were injured from crashing into walls and fencing while trying to escape. Similar sheep panics happened again in the same parts of England in 1889 and 1893, and again, no clear explanation. In late November 1970, a family hiking in a remote valley near Bergen, Norway, a place locals called Death Valley, found a badly burned woman's body lying on the rocks. Her clothes were scorched, her face was unrecognizable, and the labels had been cut off her clothes. Police ruled her death as a combination of carbon monoxide poisoning and a huge dose of sleeping pills, and there was soot in her lungs, which showed she was alive when the fire started, but that didn't explain why she was there or who she actually was. A few days later, police found 2 suitcases at the train station in Bergen, and they figured they were most likely hers. Inside were strange things: eye cream with the doctor's name scraped off, foreign money, a bunch of wigs, and a notebook filled with strange codes. Police eventually decoded the notebook to show a trail of travel dates and locations. When detectives checked travel records, they found she'd been going around Europe and Norway using at least 8 different fake passports and identities, listing different countries of birth and occupations each time she checked in. She spoke several languages too: German, French, Flemish, and some English, and witnesses described her as cautious, quiet, and paying in cash whenever she booked a room. She was last seen leaving a hotel in Bergen and taking a taxi, but nobody knows where she was headed, and her real name and reasons for being there are still unknown. Because this all happened during the Cold War, though, some people think she might have been involved in espionage, and considering all the wigs, fake identities, secret codes, and always paying in cash to avoid leaving a trail, it's really not much of a stretch. More than 50 years later, no one knows who she really was or the exact circumstances of her death. In 1976, in Circleville, Ohio, people around town began getting anonymous letters. They were angry letters, threatening, and they were personal. Eerily, the writers seemed to know all these private details about people's lives. The letters accused people of secret affairs and other bad behavior. They usually came with warnings to knock it off or face consequences. One of the main people targeted was a woman named Mary Gillespie. She kept getting letters claiming she was having an affair with the local school superintendent, which she denied. Then her husband, Ron Gillespie, received a letter saying that if he didn't stop what was going on, he'd end up dead. Not long after that, Ron was found dead. His truck crashed into a tree. Police ruled it an accident, but considering that dark letter, a lot of people didn't buy that explanation, and the letters didn't stop. As time went on, people became more and more suspicious of each other. Some people thought the school superintendent was behind it. No matter how many theories came up, nothing was definitive. All these years later, no one knows who sent the letters. The case is turned into an Ohio legend, with some even wondering if the letters came from a ghost, some kind of angry spirit haunting the town. On May 20th, 1967, a Polish industrial mechanic named Steve Michalek drove out to White Shell Provincial Park in Manitoba. He was prospecting for quartz. Late in the morning, he heard a strange noise overhead, like a flock of geese, but it was kind of mixed with this buzzing hum. When he looked up, he saw 2 glowing cigar-shaped objects descending toward a rocky clearing nearby. One of them landed, the other took off. Michalek said the object on the ground looked metallic and solid, and it was hot enough that he felt heat radiating off it. He figured it had to be some sort of experimental craft, so he called out to it. There was no answer, so he tried in his native tongue, Polish. Nothing. He tried Russian. No response. Curious, he approached the craft, and that's when a hatch her panel opened, blasting hot air directly at him. He just stumbled back, and the thing lifted off, leaving him with burns across his chest and abdomen. The burns were grid-like, kind of like a vent. Volcanic was in the hospital sick for weeks, and he suffered ongoing symptoms for years. Even stranger, some of the metal fragments he picked up near the site showed slightly elevated radiation levels. Volcanic stuck to his story until his death. Decades later, Falcon Lake is still considered one of the most well-documented UFO encounters in Canada. Back in 1808, something massive erupted somewhere on Earth, but nobody actually saw it. We only know it happened because scientists looked at ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica, which trapped tiny bits of volcanic ash in layers of ice. Around 1808, there's this huge spike. That means there was an eruption big enough to change the climate around the world. The summers would have been cooler, there would have been problems with crops, but there's just no record of a volcano big enough to cause this. Scientists have pieced together some clues. Reports from Colombia and Peru describe cold frosts and a strange transparent cloud blocked out the sun around December of 1808. Most scientists think it was probably a volcano in a really remote spot, maybe a tiny Pacific island. Some wonder if it was actually just a bunch of smaller eruptions happening close together. Whatever it was massive enough to leave a clear mark in the ice, disrupt the climate, but yet vanish from history. In the spring of 1946, a killer stalked the rural areas around Texarkana, right on the border between Texas and Arkansas. Attacks usually happened late at night, often targeting young couples parked in secluded spots. Press dubbed the attacker the Phantom Killer, and the name stuck. Over 10 weeks, at least 5 people were unalived and several others were seriously injured. Those survivors described a masked man, sometimes wearing a white hood or sack over his head. He used different weapons. He attacked some with firearms, others with blunt force objects. Police launched a huge manhunt, questioning hundreds of suspects, but just as suddenly as it all started, the attacks just stopped. They never caught the guy, and to this day, the Phantom Killer has never been identified. It's still one of the most infamous unsolved sprees in American history. Between roughly 1916 and the late 1920s, a terrifying disease swept across the world. It was called Encephalitis Lethargica, but most people knew it as sleeping sickness. And oh boy, is it one of the most disturbing illnesses, ailments, phenomena I've ever heard of. It would start with flu-like symptoms, then slowly you'd slip into this frozen trance-like state. Some slept nearly all day. Others were awake but unable to move or speak, conscious but trapped inside their own bodies. Thousands died, and people who survived it were often left permanently changed with tremors and Parkinson-type symptoms, but also, personality-wise, they were just never quite the same. Doctors had no idea what caused it. It showed up during the same era as the Spanish flu, but no evidence the two were connected. And then the disease just faded away. By the 1930s, there were barely any new cases. What caused it, nobody knows. It's still one of the most unsettling medical mysteries in history. In March of 1928, a young boy named Walter Collins disappeared in Los Angeles. His mom, Christine Collins, sent him to the store, and he just never came back. Newspapers were covering it non-stop. Police were under serious pressure to find him. Well, 5 months later, officers announced they'd found Walter all the way in Illinois. They put the boy on a train and brought him back to Los Angeles for a big reunion. But the moment Christine saw him, her heart just sank. It wasn't her son, but the police doubled down, insisting the boy was Walter, and basically said Christine was just overly emotional and confused. She kept pushing back though. So what did they do? Reopen the case and continue the search? Well, no. They had her locked up for refusing to accept the boy. Child eventually admitted that he wasn't Walter. He was a runaway who'd pretended to be him because he wanted a free trip to California. Christine was released, thankfully, but it didn't matter. Where was Walter? The investigation later led police to a ranch owned by a man named Gordon Stewart Northcott. He'd taken the lives of several young boys. Walter was very likely one of his victims. Northcott was eventually executed, but he never clearly said what happened to Walter Collins. Out in rural eastern Virginia, near the tiny community of Cohoke, people have been reporting the same weird thing near the railroad tracks. Late at night, usually when it was quiet and dark, a light would appear right along the tracks. A single glowing light that looked like it was floating a few feet off the ground. It would slowly move toward them, then stop. Sometimes it would fade out completely, only to show up again a few minutes later in a different spot. It didn't blink like a signal light, and it didn't move like a train. By the 60s and 70s, the Cohoke Light had become such a big deal that people were driving in from other towns just to sit by the tracks. Watch. Police had to chase people off because they kept standing too close to the rails. Some said it had to be car headlights from a nearby road, even though witnesses swore the light moved in ways headlights just don't. Others blamed reflections, fog, but there were also claims that when you tried to get closer, the light would pull away. For hundreds and hundreds of years, Polynesian sailors have talked about a strange light they see out in the Pacific Ocean that they call Lapa. It shows up as this quick white flash or streak moving through the water, usually just below the surface. Experienced navigators would say the light would sometimes point them in the direction of islands far beyond what they could see. No one has ever figured out exactly what causes it. Most of the world didn't really hear about Lapa until 1972, when adventurer David Lewis wrote the book We the Navigators. Lewis worked directly with sailors from remote Polynesian islands. They told him Lapa would be seen as far as 100 miles from land and that it always pointed toward an island. Lewis said the light didn't look like lightning at all. It moved in streaks and quick flashes, more like something darting through the water. Later on, Marion George, a scientist who studied the phenomenon with Lewis, witnessed Lapa herself. She went through the usual explanations, maybe glowing plankton, auroras, reflections, but she ruled them all out. So even after all that, there's still no clear answer for what the light actually is. And that's been the video for today. We'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next one.